Ukraine's latest drone strike didn't just hit a refinery, it shook Russia's entire energy system. Let's break down what really happened and why this attack matters. The night sky over the Samara region didn't just light up with the usual industrial glow of the Volga's petrochemical heartland this week. It was torn apart by a new kind of thunder. In the early hours of late November 2025, the Novokuybyshevsk refinery, a crown jewel in Rosneft's massive energy empire, became ground zero for what is rapidly turning into a crippling economic nightmare for the Russian Federation. We are looking at an event that goes far beyond a simple fire at a factory. This is a strategic decapitation of Russia's ability to fuel its own war machine, and the price tag attached to this single night of chaos is sending shockwaves through the Kremlin's budget. We are talking about a 2.5 billion fuel nightmare that has just ignited. Let's be very clear about what happened. This was not a random accident or a lucky shot. This was a precision strike by Ukraine, which has, by all measurable metrics in late 2025, established itself as the dominant force in the asymmetric war for energy supremacy. The reports coming out of Samara are consistent, and they are damning. Residents in Novokuybyshevsk described a low hum, the now familiar sound of the moped engine associated with long-range loitering munitions, followed by a series of concussive blasts that shook the windows of apartment blocks kilometers away. Verified footage from the ground shows the distinct silhouette of what experts identify as the upgraded Lyuty drone diving toward the distillation columns, followed by a fireball that turned the night into day. This refinery isn't just another dot on a map. Novokuybyshevsk is one of Rosneft's primary arteries. It doesn't just produce gasoline for civilian cars. It produces the specialized jet fuel and high-grade diesel that powers everything from Sukhoi fighter jets to T-90 tanks on the front lines. When you take this facility offline, you aren't just making gas more expensive in Moscow. You are physically starving the logistical beast that keeps the Russian army moving. And that is exactly what Ukraine has done. The title of this situation, the $2.5 billion fuel nightmare, is not hyperbole. It is a calculation of the cascading losses that trigger the moment a facility of this magnitude stops processing crude. You have the immediate cost of the infrastructure itself. These are not simple boilers. They are complex, custom-built fractional distillation units that, prior to 2022, were largely maintained and upgraded by Western engineering firms that have since exited the country. Replacing a main processing tower in a sanctioned economy is exponentially more expensive and slower than it would be in a free market. You are looking at hundreds of millions in direct hardware damage. But the real money, the billions, is in the downstream carnage. Every day this refinery sits idle is a day Rosneft is burning cash instead of crude. In the first half of 2025 alone, Rosneft's revenues were already taking a beating, down significantly due to global shifts and previous strikes. Now, add to that the forced halt of high-value exports. When you strip 10 to 15% of a nation's refining capacity offline in a coordinated campaign, which is what Ukraine has achieved since August, you force the government into a panic. They have to ban exports to keep domestic prices stable, which means the foreign currency inflows that Putin relies on to prop up the ruble simply vanish. That $2.5 billion figure represents the black hole of lost contracts, emergency repairs, environmental cleanup, and the frantic premium price import of fuel from neighboring states just to keep the lights on. This strike reinforces a reality that many analysts have been hesitant to admit until now. Ukraine has effectively won the battle for the skies over Russia's industrial interior. For the first 2 years of this war, the narrative was about Russia's missile barrages on Kyiv's power grid. That dynamic has completely inverted. Today, it is Ukrainian innovation that dictates the tempo. The drone used in this attack, likely the latest iteration of the Lyuty or the newer Palyanitsia jet drone hybrids, represents a quantum leap in engineering. These aren't repurposed hobby kits. These are sophisticated, AI-assisted, deep strike systems, capable of navigating thousands of kilometers, bypassing traditional air defense bubbles, and delivering a payload with surgical precision. What makes this dominance so humiliating for the Russian Ministry of Defense is the sheer geography of it. Samara is deep inside Russia. It is hundreds of kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The fact that a slow-moving drone can traverse that much hostile airspace, evade the S-300 and S-400 batteries that are supposedly the best in the world, and strike a stationary high-value target like Novokuybyshevsk suggests a total failure of Russia's air defense integration. It implies that Russia has had to strip its rear areas of protection to cover the carnage on the front lines in the Donbass, leaving its economic heart wide open to a dagger thrust. And the timing could not be worse for the Kremlin. We are heading into the deep Russian winter. This is the season when energy demand peaks. In previous years, Russia used winter as a weapon, threatening to freeze Europe by cutting off gas. Now, the table has turned. It is Russian cities that are facing the prospect of fuel rationing. We are already seeing reports from the summer and fall of 2025 showing gasoline shortages in southern regions, with prices at the pump jumping despite government caps. The destruction at Novokuybyshevsk accelerates this crisis. You can't hide a fuel shortage. When the pumps run dry in Samara, or the price of heating oil spikes in the Urals, the war comes home to the Russian population in a way that state propaganda cannot ignore. Let's look at the financial data that frames this nightmare. By late 2025, reports indicate that Russia's oil revenues are in freefall, with some estimates suggesting a drop of up to $25 billion for the year. The Novokuybyshevsk inferno is a massive accelerant to this trend. Rosneft is already struggling with the impact of sanctions that have left millions of barrels of crude stranded on tankers with nowhere to go. Now they have the crude, but they lack the refining capacity to turn it into a sellable product. It's a logistical bottleneck of epic proportions. They are forced to sell raw crude at steep discounts to buyers like India or China, if they can get it there, while simultaneously facing a domestic shortage of the refined product they need to run their economy. It is the definition of a lose-lose scenario. This attack also highlights the sophisticated intelligence network Ukraine is operating. To hit the specific catalytic cracking unit that causes the most long-term damage requires detailed, insider knowledge of the refinery's layout. It suggests that Ukraine knows exactly where Rosneft is most vulnerable and is systematically working down a list of targets. First, it was Ryazan, then Volgograd, and now Novokuybyshevsk. This is a campaign of attrition, and right now, the Russian energy sector is breaking faster than it can be fixed. The response from Moscow has been telling. In the immediate aftermath of the strike, the usual silence prevailed. Then came the vague statements about falling debris causing a minor fire. But in the era of open-source intelligence, you cannot gaslight the world when satellites show a heat signature visible from space. The intensity of the fire at Novokuybyshevsk confirms that the strike hit the pressurized sections of the plant. We are talking about columns filled with volatile hydrocarbons at extreme temperatures. When those rupture, the resulting explosion is catastrophic for the facility's structural integrity. We also need to talk about the psychological impact of this dominance. For decades, the Russian social contract has been built on the premise of security and stability provided by the state, funded by endless oil wealth. That contract is being shredded by these drones. When the workers at Novokuybyshevsk, thousands of them, go to work tomorrow, they know they are in a war zone. When the executives at Rosneft look at their spreadsheets, they see a column of red ink that is growing by the hour. And when the generals in Moscow ask for more fuel for their offensive, they are being told, "We have a supply chain issue." Ukraine's ability to project force this deep, with this level of consistency, changes the strategic calculus of the entire war. It forces Russia to make impossible choices. Do they pull air defense systems back from the front line to protect the refineries, thereby allowing the Ukrainian Air Force more freedom to operate over the battlefield? Or do they leave the refineries exposed and watch their economy burn to the ground? So far, they have chosen the latter. And the Novokuybyshevsk inferno is the result. This is the reality of the war in late 2025. It is no longer a stalemate of artillery in a muddy field. It is a high-tech, high-stakes dismantling of a superpower's industrial base. Ukraine has effectively Uberized air superiority, using cost-effective, mass-produced drones to destroy multi-billion-dollar legacy assets. The $2.5 billion figure attached to this disaster is just the tip of the iceberg. It represents the immediate replacement cost and the short-term bleeding. But the long-term cost is the degradation of Russia's status as an energy superpower. If you cannot protect your refineries, you cannot guarantee delivery. If you cannot guarantee delivery, you lose your markets. And once those markets are gone, they don't come back. As we watch the smoke clear over Samara, one thing is undeniably clear. The initiative has shifted. Ukraine is not just defending itself, it is actively dismantling the enemy's ability to wage war. The Novokuybyshevsk refinery is burning, and with it, the illusion of Russian invulnerability is turning to ash. This is what modern warfare looks like, and right now, Ukraine is writing the playbook. What is perhaps most striking about this specific attack is the silence it imposes on the Russian leadership. There is no bravado left. There are no threats of red lines because those lines have been crossed, erased, and crossed again. The Kremlin knows that it has no answer to the Lyuty swarms. They have tried jamming. They have tried anti-aircraft guns. They have tried protective cages around the tanks. Nothing has worked. The drones get through. They adapt. They swarm. And they strike. The economic data coming out of Russia supports this grim outlook for Moscow. Inflation is stubborn. Interest rates are suffocating investment. And now the physical capital of the nation is being deleted. The fuel nightmare is also a consumer nightmare. As winter sets in, the price of diesel for heating and transport will skyrocket in the region. The average Russian citizen, already squeezed by the war economy, will feel this strike in their wallet every time they go to the store. This creates internal pressure that no amount of state media spin can alleviate. You can tell people the war is going well, but you can't tell them the gas station has fuel when the out-of-service bags are on the pumps. Furthermore, the destruction of the Novokuybyshevsk facility creates a domino effect for the entire petrochemical industry. This plant didn't just make fuel, it produced additives and lubricants that other industries rely on. When that supply chain snaps, factories that have nothing to do with the war start to slow down. It's a force multiplier of economic destruction. Ukraine understands this connectivity better than anyone. They aren't just bombing fuel tanks. They are bombing the economic coherence of the Russian Federation. In the grand chessboard of 2025, this move against Rosneft is a check. It forces the king to move, to scramble, to expend resources he doesn't have. And while the king is distracted trying to put out the fire in his own castle, his armies on the field are left looking over their shoulders, wondering if the fuel for their retreat will even be there when they need it. The Novokuybyshevsk inferno is a beacon. It signals to the world that the Second Army of the world cannot even defend its own bank account. It signals to the Russian elite that their assets are not safe, no matter how far from the front they are. And it signals to the Ukrainian people that their resilience and ingenuity are paying off in tangible, fiery results. The war is far from over, but the momentum, that elusive, critical energy of conflict, is surging through the propellers of Ukrainian drones. The 2.5 billion nightmare is real. It is burning. And for Rosneft, it is only just beginning. This is the state of play. A dominant Ukraine, leveraging technology and strategy to dismantle a giant, piece by piece, dollar by dollar, refinery by refinery. The Novokuybyshevsk attack will be studied in military academies for years to come as a textbook example of how to cripple an adversary's economy without deploying a single soldier to their soil. But for now, for the people of Samara and the accountants at Rosneft, it is simply a disaster that has no end in sight. The strategic brilliance of targeting Novokuybyshevsk specifically cannot be overstated. Located in the Volga region, it serves as a critical hub for transporting fuel both west to the front and south to export terminals. By choking this node, Ukraine disrupts the flow in multiple directions simultaneously. It creates a logistical traffic jam that ripples out for thousands of miles. Rail cars sit empty because there is no product to load. Tankers sit idle at port because the pipeline flow has dropped. It is a paralysis that creeps through the system, invisible at first, but fatal over time. And let's look at the weapon again. The Lyuty drone is a marvel of cost efficiency. For the price of a luxury car, Ukraine can destroy an asset worth hundreds of millions. The return on investment in this kinetic warfare is staggering. Russia is spending millions on air defense missiles, when they work, to shoot down cheap drones. It is an economic attrition rate that is unsustainable. Russia is bleeding money to intercept cheap plastic and metal, while Ukraine manufactures these drones at scale, improving them with every iteration. The dominance we speak of is also informational. Ukraine controls the narrative because they have the video evidence, they have the data, they have the results. Russia is left reacting, denying, and hiding. But you cannot hide a pillar of black smoke that rises 10,000 feet into the air. That smoke is a signal fire for every insurgent, every partisan, and every doubter inside Russia that the state is losing its grip. As we move deeper into the final months of 2025, we should expect this pattern to intensify. Novokuybyshevsk is not the end. It is the precedent. Ukraine has proven it can strike anywhere, at any time. The psychological toll of that uncertainty is a weapon in itself. Every refinery manager in Russia is now looking at the sky, wondering if they are next. Every insurance underwriter is recalculating the risk premiums for Russian energy assets. The cost of doing business in Russia is becoming prohibitive. This is how empires crumble. not always with a bang on the battlefield, but with the steady, relentless grinding down of their economic foundations. The fire at Novokuybyshevsk is a symptom of a terminal illness in the Russian war effort. They have run out of answers. They have run out of safe harbors. And if the current trend continues, they will soon run out of money. The 2.5 billion nightmare is not just a headline. It is the new reality of a war that Russia started. But Ukraine is finishing. The implications for the global energy market are also significant, but perhaps not in the way Putin hoped. Instead of spiking prices to hold the world hostage, these strikes are simply removing Russian product from the market, allowing other producers to step in. Russia is losing market share that it spent decades building. Europe has moved on. Asia is buying at a discount. And now, Ukraine is physically deleting the capacity to produce. It is a total strategic failure for Moscow. We must also consider the environmental aspect, which adds another layer to the nightmare. The burning of thousands of tons of refined chemicals releases a toxic plume over the Samara region. This creates a local ecological disaster that the Russian state, already stretched thin, has no capacity to manage. It adds public health grievances to the growing list of problems facing the regime. It is another crack in the dam. In conclusion, the drone attack on the Novokuybyshevsk refinery is a defining moment of late '25. It encapsulates the shift in power, the triumph of asymmetric tactics, and the deep structural rotting of the Russian war economy. The $2.5 billion fuel nightmare is a self-inflicted wound by a regime that thought it could wage a war of conquest without consequence. Ukraine has proven them wrong. With every refinery that burns, the path to a Ukrainian victory becomes clearer, illuminated by the flames of Rosneft's crumbling empire. The message from Kyiv is loud and clear. There is no sanctuary, there is no limitless budget, and there is no future for the Russian war machine. The dominance of Ukraine in this phase of the war is absolute. They have the technology, the intelligence, and the will. Russia has targets. And as long as that dynamic holds, the fires will keep burning. Novokuybyshevsk is just the latest chapter in a story of resilience and retribution that is reshaping the geopolitical map of the 21st century. We are watching history unfold in real time. The age of the tank is giving way to the age of the drone. And in that new age, Ukraine is the undisputed master. The flames over Samara are not just destroying a refinery. They are forging a new reality where aggression is met with precise, devastating, and undeniable force. As the winter snows begin to fall on the charred remains of the distillation towers, the cold reality sets in for Moscow. They are losing the energy war. They are losing the economic war. And in the long run, those are the wars that decide the fate of nations. The $2.5 billion bill has come due, and it is only the first installment. This event also signifies a failure of Russian intelligence. To allow a drone to travel that far, undetected, implies that the internal security apparatus is full of holes. It suggests that there are blind spots that Ukraine is exploiting with ease. It raises the question, what else can they hit? If a massive refinery is vulnerable, what about the weapon factories? What about the command centers? The sense of security that Putin relies on to maintain control is evaporating. The international community is watching this with a mix of awe and relief. Awe at the technical prowess of the Ukrainian military-industrial complex, which has managed to innovate under fire, and relief that the Russian bear, once feared as an unstoppable force, is being tamed by a smaller, smarter, and more agile opponent. The myth of Russian military invulnerability has been shattered, and the shards are scattered across the refinery floors of Novokuybyshevsk. For the global energy sector, this is a signal to diversify even further. Reliance on Russian stability is a bad bet. The gas station with nukes is on fire. Investors are fleeing, and rightly so. The toxic mix of sanctions, war, and physical destruction makes the Russian energy sector uninvestable. This accelerates the decoupling of the Russian economy from the world, isolating it further and hastening its decline. In the end, the story of the Novokuybyshevsk refinery is the story of the war itself. It is a story of a rigid, top-heavy giant being taken apart by a nimble, innovative adversary. It is a story of hubris meeting consequence, and it is a story that is far from over. As long as the war continues, the drones will keep flying, and the nightmares for Rosneft will keep multiplying. The $2.5 billion represents not just lost money, but lost time, lost capability, and lost hope. And in war, hope is the most expensive commodity of all. The sheer scale of the facility at Novokuybyshevsk means that repairs are not a matter of weeks, but months or years. In a war of attrition, time is a luxury Russia does not have. Every day of downtime is a strategic victory for Ukraine. It is a day where the tanks don't get their diesel, the jets don't get their fuel, and the budget doesn't get its revenue. It is a death by 1,000 cuts, but some cuts, like this one, sever arteries. We must also acknowledge the bravery of the Ukrainian operators who plan and execute these missions. It requires nerves of steel and a level of technical proficiency that rivals any major power. They are rewriting the rules of engagement and showing the world that you don't need a massive navy or air force to project power. You just need ingenuity and the will to win. So, as the smoke drifts over the Volga, remember this moment. It is the moment when the balance tipped. It is the moment when the fuel nightmare became real. And it is the moment when Ukraine cemented its status as the dominant force in the war that will define this generation. The Novokuybyshevsk refinery is more than a burning building. It is a symbol of a turning tide. The verified information is clear. The strike happened, the damage is real, and the economic fallout is massive. The unknown drones have made themselves known in the most spectacular way possible. And for Russia, the nightmare is just beginning. Sources indicate that the fires burned for hours, overwhelming local emergency services. This lack of preparedness is another indicator of systemic failure. The Russian state cannot protect its own critical infrastructure, nor can it effectively manage the consequences when that infrastructure is hit. It is a state of fragility that contradicts the strongman image Putin projects. As we analyze the fallout, keep an eye on the fuel prices in Russia over the coming weeks. That will be the true barometer of the damage. Watch the export volumes. Watch the frantic diplomatic efforts to secure spare parts. These are the indicators of a system under extreme stress. The $2.5 billion figure is a baseline. The true cost may be much, much higher. If you want more sharp breakdowns like this, hit subscribe and stay with us.